I would like to thank for your presence. It's a great honor to mediate this session, the second roundtable of public policies, with the presence of people that I admire the most, and I believe they have a lot to contribute to our discussion among disciplines, among sectors that we always have at CEUCI for the development of knowledge territories from the multi-agent perspective. And the question that is set, and from the subject you are working with locally, and for this feasibility of knowledge territories. And I would like to call Marcelo and Marcelo Colutini, and she is from Campinas, he's from Campinas. Silvia, that has a beautiful name that I cannot pronounce. She's the director of urbanism from Jundiaí. Rebecca Dantas, for public policies at the city of São Paulo, and Tainá Bittencourt, and she is from the National Front of Mayors. Thank you. And without further ado, I would like to call the speakers because they will have a short period of time, but quite fruitful for their presentations. And when it's still 3 minutes to go, I will let you know, so there will be plenty of time for people to ask questions. So now, Secretary Marcelo, your presentation. Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone who's here, who's watching from YouTube. A difficult mission, right? Right after lunch, everybody's sleepy. So we will have to really, I will start sitting and then I can stand up, okay? So first of all, I would like to greet all Silvias who are here, Rebecca, Tainá, for being here with me at this table. Thank you for being here to have such a female table around me. Campinas, in relation to the question that was posed about our challenge on going around a knowledge territory, we chose to prepare a presentation with a concrete case, that is the PIDs. I will be able to present and show which are the challenges we have from PIDs and fourth generation knowledge territory. Now I will stand up for my presentation. Great. So first of all, I would like to thank CEUCI on behalf of Gabriela for the invitation and the partnership for developing the project. When I came to the City Hall in the middle of last year, this project was evolving. It was almost ready, in fact. So I got this gift, and I'm doing my best to transform it and make it as big as it is. So let's go. Campinas today is a city that has an entire ecosystem of innovation, and they have everything to be a knowledge territory. Since 1987, when the Agronomy Institute came to Campinas, we have this trend for innovation, agriculture, and then others came. Unicamp, FATEC, PUC, Sirius, and now Orion. So Campinas has this duty to have this innovation ecosystem. And this is pretty good for us to become a knowledge territory. And it's our challenge to do that in order to transform our entire ecosystem in a fourth generation knowledge territory. So we have an innovation ecosystem that is solid and dense. The City Hall aims at introducing an innovative and sustainable plan that is one of the pillars for us to form this fourth generation knowledge territory. Besides that, we are going to add the environmental part as well as social participation. When we are able to do the entire movement, and then we are going to have this knowledge territory of fourth generation. And PITS includes all that, the intelligent and sustainable development. So let's talk a little bit about the PITS. This is the PITS, an area of 17 million square meters located close to Unicamp. You can check Unicamp, it's here in the map. And the idea is to transform this area. If I use the local zoning, I can only have industries and companies, not mixed use. And the idea here is to have, besides technological companies, innovation companies, I can have houses and other uses. So that's where we have this innovation pole and sustainable development area. And we draw a parallel with RIDS. And it has this design with PUC, Unicamp, and the City Hall. And the HIDS area is 12 million square meters. And the PIDS is an area with 17 million square meter. And what is the major challenge here? The major challenge is to bring investors to this area, so this will become feasible. We have the entire idea, and that's why it was created an entire urban plan with modern buildings, active facade, larger streets, public areas. All that is beautiful, but if I don't have an investor, if I don't have a company that comes and invests, nothing will leave paper. So that's our major challenge. So here we have a video. Instead of talking, I'm going to show you the video because it's pretty interesting and will wake up people. A city opportunities open to innovation, connection, and coexistence. Positioned as 5th place in the Connected Smart Cities ranking, it's committed to urban development and quality of life. With more than 1 million inhabitants, it represents an important portion of the national GDP, and it's a reference in technology, besides being among the between the most important roads in São Paulo. The Sustainable Development Innovation Park has 17 million square meters, and within is the International Sustainability Hub, that is the HIDS. Part of the area is in the Argentina farm. Imagine as an organization that will develop actions with social, economic, and environmental developments. HIDS confirms the search for innovation in the city, bringing together in a single structure research centers, companies, and public agencies. In order to expand opportunities in this region, we remodel and remodernize the Pole 2 sea attack, as well as the distribution, use, and occupation rules. Therefore, the entire area is now known as the Innovation and Sustainable Development Hub, PITS. Inspired in smart cities that are referenced around the world, its urbanization encompasses new urban practices essential for a dynamic and innovation setting. Well, its proposal is based on 5 important pillars: respect to the environment, urban kindness, mixed use, creative spaces, and technology at the service of people. Through these pillars, its structure foresees adequate tree-lined and wide sidewalks, active facades, and fewer walls to provide construction of room and cultural places, better attractiveness for walking, coexistence, and increased security, less dependency on vehicles, and better quality of life. Public spaces and connections between buildings that ensure better, shorter journey, meetings, and accessible spaces for living and leisure, and less requirement of vehicle parking spaces. Lower buildings with 7th floor assure a better relationship with the city, more pleasant streets, and safe places for people to stay. Integration and use of public areas with wiring, so people have environmental and social benefits. This is the concept behind the PIDs. A city that is friendlier, designed for the people. So this is the PIDs. As you could see, it has all the characteristics of a fourth generation knowledge territory. We need to have this sustainability issue, social participation, so it can become this knowledge territory. Just telling a little bit about the story. This project started in 2018, a public partnership with universities, PUC and Unicamp. And during those years, we had visits. I wasn't there, but the team, Erica, Conceição, they went for visits. Gabriel also. They went for visits in Korea, in Spain, and they collected what was more modern and that adjusted the best to our region. So that's how the master plan was born. And you can see it has some characteristics. All areas in purple are areas to install industry, companies dedicated to technology. The areas in orange are the central areas in which we can build buildings up to 7 floors, and green area is the environmental area in which you have a linear park in Numas that goes through the entire PIDS areas, and it's our main point for the entire project. So how are we today? Today we have a law project that is 005/2024, in which all these changes, urban changes, are proposed, and it was approved. And we are proposing an important urban option for the city government, and it will be voted in the following months. It's going to be approved by the mayor, it's going to become a law, and it's going to be able to have industries and companies installed, as well as buildings and shops inside the model that we have projected. Well, how is it? Well, thank you. With that, this is a concrete case here in Campinas that we call PIDS, and I divide with CEUCI all the challenge of transforming this area, this pole, into a knowledge territory, fourth generation territory. And I count on Gabriela and the entire team so we can have this transformation. This morning we had the announcement of the launching of the network of knowledge territories, and I believe it's pretty important for the network that will help us and other innovation plans that propose here in São Paulo to have this exchange of information, of knowledge, so we can create more knowledge territories. So important to exchange experience, search for investors, and so on. So that's what I had to share with you. I thank once again for your presence, and I'm here available in case you have any questions. Thank you very much. Now, Sylvia. To play every single day. And the second guideline is that it is the duty of the public power to let that happen, especially in 2 kilometers from the house of that child. So from these guidelines, we started working in 2017 with a strategic choice to plan the urban aspects and starting with the urban planning around public schools. Jundiaí has a population of 460 inhabitants, a public network of 33,000 inhabitants, distributed in 105 schools. If these kids go everywhere from home to school, it's essential that we check how the conditions are in the pathways. Are they safe? Are they accessible? So are they interesting? Are they awakening the children's skills? Because there's no neutral space. It favors or jeopardizes the child. So it's quintessential that we treat this environment as a stimulation. So we started from a pilot project in a school with 500 students, and we went with the urban development team. We asked the children, how is your pathway to school? Who do you come to school? How long does it take to come to school? And what do you enjoy the most? And from those answers, we prepared a diagnosis of the area and the whereabouts of this public school. For instance, here we saw that 65% of kids walked to school, and that's a meaningful number. So most children go with their parents, but some children go with another child, and 12% go alone. So we need to check traffic signs, security, and so on. And other kids believe when they describe their pathway, they say that it's ugly, dangerous, and boring. So they also designed and drew the elements they enjoy. And we can see that there is always nature, flowers, trees, leisure representation, and also mobility elements, crossing lane, some traffic lights. We see that this is something recurrent. Some are pretty didactic, so we have no questions of what it is about. Children wrote like crossing line, they wanted a square, a tree, a bike lane, so a sidewalk. It's amazing. But those are recurrent things. It's not too much. We can pretty much understand. And from those answers, we mapped the address of children who answered, and we saw which are the most common pathways that the children go through. And then we chose one area for a pilot project that was not being used as an area close to the school. We had a simple project that showed us that with only a few things, it's possible to change the routine of an entire neighborhood. So this was open in 2017, and we were able to see that teachers took kids to play there, neighbors also attended. There was a change in the urban dynamics of the neighborhood, and that was a positive point for us, and we could escalate this action. We created from that point on a program that is called Between Home and School. So we would redesign the pathways of children to school. And then it was not only an action for urban planning. It was something that would be intersectorial with other management units. We had to have together mobility, traffic, health. Education was there because the doors of the school were open, but also we needed culture to change habits, to bring activities to these spaces, education, social assistance. Well, historically speaking, the public actions for childhood are related to social assistance, health, and education. What we have been doing in Jundiaí, it's to introduce the territory to the discussion. It's not only to have a school spot, to be helped at the hospital, to receive food when they are under vulnerability. It's important for the kids to walk around the city on their own in a safe manner, so they have public spaces to get in touch with nature, so they can develop not only physically but also cognitively, socially, and mentally. And that only happens in public spaces, being able to deal with what is different. And that offers skills, including tolerance, when we have the opportunity to interact with others. So later, the challenge we had was how to escalate the project. So we looked for an institutional partner that was the Alana Institute, and we wanted that not only to be an urban project, but a public policy. So what do we need? And then they were important partners because they defined with us a project to make servers and the audience sensitive to the situation. So everybody would understand why childhood is important, why do we prepare a city not only for children, but from children it's good for everyone. And then from events, here we have our mayor and also the secretaries, learning from case studies, situations that worked in Germany and in Brazil. And we qualified servers in relation to the importance. We created an interdisciplinary group that get together every week for priorities. And it was represented for the management, and from this government on, we have a platform structure. So the departments are grouped by affinity. Urban development, it goes with transportation, and education with culture. So we have this favorable concept of government platforms, and this model was reproduced in this working group that is called Children in School. We also have a committee of children. So it's through a decree, 24 children from 8 to 14 years of age. They get together every month to say what they want from the city, what is nice, what is not nice. The mayor receives in the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year, the kids write a letter with a set of suggestions, and he commits himself to comply with some. And once he complies with that, he sends to us, and then we have to do it. So it was with the park, small squares, and that was with one of the matters that they asked to have more benches on the parks so parents could sit and didn't want to take them home soon. And we have this kids on the streets.
Another action that was very simple was to create play streets. So basically, we authorize closure of streets on the weekends so children and neighbors can occupy the streets to play. That doesn't require previous investment, even though the municipality eventually brings equipment, but it's not a requirement. So we authorize the streets to be closed, and once they are granted the authorization, it lasts for a year. This is a park that was built. It was a very important project next to the water reservoir for the city that is being expanded now. And we promote leisure activities in contact with nature. So we have a big park for children to go to, but they need to get there by bus or car. We know it's important to have small squares in their daily route. So more than 30 small playgrounds like this ones were built in their most important pathways. And it's important to institutionalize these actions. So when we reviewed the city's master plan, we have included a chapter to discuss public policies for children, describing goals, the importance of the initiatives, and what architects and urban planners need to comply to so the city is more welcoming to children. We also have a neighborhood plan, which is a planning instrument that is provided for the master plan. We have 6 neighborhood plans, and for the plan, we have used the same methodology from the program that looked at the journeys from home to school. So we determined the priority pathways that connect health clinics, small playgrounds, and schools. And we also, of course, listen to caregivers in order to define the projects. The plan was developed in 2 years. It was approved by a law, and we have 4 targets and 41 actions. And at this scale, we are closer to the territory. We have more contact with the population, and we can define specific projects for the area. We have mapped all the public spaces, and we provided suggestions for occupying them. A little bit of the survey that we did with children. We talked to 170 children to develop the neighborhood plan. And here we see in their drawings a little bit of their concerns. 51% of the children asked for more trees, gardens, and flowers. 40% asked for more playgrounds and squares. 20% asked for improvements in urban mobility. Of course, they don't say it like that, but based on the drawings, we see that they are looking for a place to cross the street. They are looking for a place to ride their bikes. We also listened to the representative from that specific neighborhood that is part of the Kids Council. So he gave us more detail about his routine. And he said that his brother is in a wheelchair, and I struggle a lot with irregular pavement. Or I wish the trucks wouldn't speed up in the school street because we are afraid of them. So all these comments were used as input for the architect, so they developed the suggestions and the targets in the plan. We also talked to the parents. So in the area, we had 15 public schools, so we talked to parents from those 15 schools using the same methodology. And 40% of the kids walk to school. Initially, that seems like a very low number because of the topology of the neighborhood. And the second question is, if you don't walk your kid to school, what are the difficulties that you find? And 20% of them said that they would like for their kids to walk to school, but that would only be possible if the journey was in better condition. And they required more shaded areas and better pavement. Pavement is a little bit more difficult to intervene, but it's very easy to plant a tree. So from that point on, we created a program called Pé de Árvore. 86% of them said they wanted more trees. 72% said that they would accept a tree in front of their house. So the number is a little bit lower, but still very significant. So we mapped the houses of the people who said that they would like a tree in front of the house. And based on all that information, we did a project for planting the trees. And we have started the process already, and they would generate a 20% increase in the total number of trees in the neighborhood. Some images from the tree program. The citizen make the request, the city plants it, and we invite the parents to participate in the moment, and we all benefit. Until today, we have planted 1,375 trees in 3 years. We want to plant 5,000 trees in the next 10 years. We have an increase in people walking on streets, reducing heat islands and the overall temperature. And it's a challenge sometimes to convince people to have a tree in front of their house, but it is a work that we are also doing, raising awareness among them about the importance. We also created urban green gardens. 2/3 of the people surveyed say that they would like to participate in a project like this. We launched a green garden program. So the city offers a training course and selects and provides, of course, training to all those who are interested, and they get the area to start planting. Currently, we have 7 green gardens producing. 6 are currently being built. So we are basically fencing the area and preparing the ground. And after that, the citizens take over. This is the training course that we provide, and some images, some before and after images of the spaces. This is from the Guanabara neighborhood. We built a park next to the green garden so kids could play in contact with nature. For each playground, we say what can be done and the current condition, if it's a good area or bad area, depending on the topography, if we need to requalify the area. So we understand the space and bring a number of suggestions so the public spaces can be occupied. With this proposal of micro parks, natural micro parks, we select toys and equipment. So business people who eventually look to City Hall and are interested in doing social work, we can offer them suggestions and ideas so they understand what can be done. So that's why we developed this work. This is another program called Eu Banco, because kids, again, wanted more benches on close to playground so they could play. And citizens can buy a bench and they choose what is going to be written on that bench. And there are a number of quotes that we suggest, and people can buy a bank for the city. A bench, sorry. So again, it's important to monitor all these public policies because if we don't measure it, we don't know if it's working. So we have an observatory in the city of Jundiaí with more than 150 indicators connected to early childhood. We are part of different networks that are essential for structuring the actions. The Latin American network, now we have a Brazilian network called City of Children. Urban 95 that has been helping us implement the programs, bringing the perspective of a child. I don't know if you're familiar with Urban 95, but it's the view that a 3-year-old toddler has. So they are pretty much 95 centimeters high, and we consider that perceptive when developing the projects. So in summary, how was the public policy structured in the city of Jundiaí? We chose a strategic area, starting with schools. We made an intervention, a pilot area. We listened to children and their parents. We did an evidence-based diagnosis. We looked for institutional partnerships. We created a multidisciplinary work group that raised awareness among the team and the managers. We created a number of plans, programs, and projects. We have standards for institutionalizing the action so they don't get lost when a new government takes over. We are monitoring the results. We are participating in different networks, and we provide funding for the actions. So now we have a specific budget for childhood-related public policies. This is it, and I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you very much. That was Sylvia, the director for the Urban Planning Department in the city of Jundiaí. And now I will invite Rebecca, who is an assistant for public policies from the São Paulo Department of Urban Planning. Good afternoon. How are you? My name is Rebecca. I would like to start by saying that I came all the way from the northeast of Brazil down to São Paulo, and the best part of what we do is that we can work anywhere because we work with cities, and all cities need to be evolved and improved. Today, I'll mention a few triggers, since this is such a common word today. But I would like to start with a universe of thought. Because again, we are talking about people, places, feelings, a number of things that are connected to the development of a city. So for me, this view varies or includes different levels: engagement, belonging, and social participation, which is one of our biggest challenges. So our main goal is to combine all these different elements inside an organization that includes the civil society, the public authority, and the private initiative. All our projects follow that path. So how can we relate these two extremes in the construction of a knowledge territory? And one of the ideas is to work with a strong sense of belonging. Because when we talk about listening to people, we want for them to take over and take ownership of the space. So with that in mind, I would like to perhaps bring some food for thought. We always look at international references like this big park in New York, but we also have a big park in the city of Recife. We have a bridge in Chicago that's very famous, but we also have a bridge in the city of Recife. I had the opportunity of living in a city called Newcastle in the north of the UK, and I started to realize that that was also very similar to Recife. So we are here to share knowledge, and I would like to highlight the work done by CEUCI by bringing different experiences together. And once again, I would like to reinforce that when we are working, we can have different set of knowledges inside urbanism, but when we bring that down to the territorial level, it's all about belonging with engagement of the population that will create an effective memory and this ownership so these public policies are long lasting. Because if we start to create positive experiences, like in the example of the city of Jundiaí, certainly these children will have a different experience which will play a role on the citizens they will become in the future and in any other role they might take in society. And that could lead to a greater degree of engagement. And that's why I have two examples. One from São Paulo, because that's what I was asked to do, but I also want to share the experience from Recife. I used to work in the Recife municipality. And we're talking about two different scales. First, I was working in Barreiras, in the hills of the city, and we were wondering how can we cause a change of behavior in this territory, similar to what Sylvia presented. And this element of the soccer field that we saw in the children's drawings and in the inspirations that we looked for. I also went to the cities of Medellin and Bogota in last year, and that football field is open 24 hours. Because so why only healthcare systems should work for 24 hours? Why not playgrounds as well? So the goal of the program was to focus on the integration of public policies involving different institutions, engaging the citizens, and the idea was to reinvent the relationship between citizens and the community. So they did an affection mapping that can be done in a neighborhood that will look to recover the identity behind that territory. But how can we do that? Because it all looks very beautiful, but we also have to think about the challenges. So first, we need to work with data and evidence. We know how difficult it is as a manager. And then we need to think about partnerships and networks. Everyone that is here knows that becoming closer to a research group or to different organizations is part of the process. You need a good technical staff, and you need to focus a lot on planning. So the engagement can be transformed into social participation. With that in mind, there are different ways to discuss engagement. And here we see some quick data on that intervention that was done with the children. So the level of occupancy before and after. So where are the children playing? A little bit of what Sylvia presented. Some factors for this to work, of course, include public will, the knowledge level of the public manager, and the intervention. But how can we go from that previous model and think about the scale of the city of São Paulo, a city with 13 million inhabitants? So we have 1.5 million inhabitants in Recife, and we were always working around the Department of Urban Innovation, a department that was created to rethink the projects. But when I got to the city of São Paulo, there was a challenge of building a governance structure with 17 departments, develop the technical and operational support with indirect institutions, and work with partnerships from the civil society. So currently we have the support from 8 organizations that collaborate in the social support system, and we have action guidelines. The foundation of both examples are close. We need to have more integration and more social participation, and we need to promote social impact. But what is new here? So inside the São Paulo municipality, we started to develop policies that used reference equipment in the city as a reference. And that's why there's a connection with innovation districts, Because whether we think about CEUs in São Paulo, UVAs in Medellín, or the Terpas in the city of Belém do Pará, these hubs that provide access to social policies, they can also be used to promote training and development. So the CEUs in São Paulo already have a partnership with a university. So how can we expand the reach for technology developing using equipment that is mostly perceived for only for children or culture? So the idea is to expand the view and the use of this equipment. And for that reason, we have developed an interdepartment action methodology in territories of social vulnerability that can be replicated. I won't go deep into the methodology, but that commission that I showed in the beginning, remember, has 17 departments. So we mapped what we already had in terms of program, what were the resources available, the teams, and how long would it take to make that possible. And then we looked at the territory, and we noticed that the budget was not being fully divided by regions. So we needed to make all programs and projects part of our target program so we can work in the territory. And that, of course, includes social policies. We needed to map what are the gaps in terms of social services and constructions. So how we can organize all that. Some of the organizations that partner with us have already developed neighborhood plans that can support us. In others, we needed to do a direct communication with the population.
So we structured planning that is short, long, medium, and long term. The good part is that we didn't have the construction real-time monitoring. Here started in 2019, and we have some results. So different from the first case that it was a tactic urbanism intervention. This one is transformation based on the structural levels of vulnerable locations. So we see the best of in the periphery territories, public space project. How can we give dignity to these territories in a high level, bringing sanitary constructions and also this autonomy of coming and going, and also the increase of access. We know we have a lot of offers in São Paulo for mobility. How can we approximate the demands? Because sometimes the sub-district is huge and it includes a huge region. And we want to understand how can we take that in a spot situation according to the needs of the population in order to close these gaps. Hence, I will finish in order to understand that the process of belonging for those who are in the territory, those who will be in their rights to access and assure that the voice of the population is heard and continue, because planning is well, there will always be things to improve. And that's why we have the participation of all players, so we can have, well, we can assure and win a couple of issues related to politics. If we have an engaged population, a civil society that is engaged, and the public management rooted in the methodological process, we can assure the perpetuation of knowledge. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rebecca. And now I would like to call for the last presentation, Taina, please. She's a consultant of the National Front of Mayors. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Sylvia for the invitation, everyone who's present here. I'm going to see a broader point of view. I don't work with the municipality. I'm in the National Front of Mayors. I don't know if you know what it is. It's an association of small and middle-sized municipalities in Brazil. So those with 80,000 or plus inhabitants, and our role is to defend the interest of municipalities in the dialogues with the Congress and the executive power, and when there is lack of human resources, capacity, and labor, people to do all that, all the attributions and everything. And then Sylvia asked me, so I'm talking about some projects we have, and what I see today I'm a specialist in urban mobility and I work with that. But in my area, I work with three major challenges every single day when we dialogue with municipalities. Technical capacity of the cities, it lacks. It's not a matter of Campinas or Jundiaí or São Paulo. It lacks technical capacity in all municipalities. Social spatial inequality, I'm going to talk about that, and metropolitan governance. I don't have time to talk about everything, so I'm going to focus on two challenges. So here, in relation to Access Cities project, Sylvia was part of that. And what have we done here to help cities? First of all, installed a technical capacity. When we talk about the new things in urban aspects, we have bus, operational control centers, and everything. And what we think when we talk about technological is the use of technologies that are used since the 1980s. GPS in buses, electronic charge, and it exists in Campinas for what, 20 years? Something around that, 15, 20 years. And GTFS, that is a standard of data from public transportation standards for the schedule, the bus stops, and the itineraries. And then we started, and how can we support that? Let's run a diagnosis. So we asked the municipalities how many collected the data, how many used the data, and how many of these municipalities opened the data. Because opening the data, you all agree that it's quintessential, not only for transparency and control of public transportation and urban mobility, but also to allow evolution. So everyone, universities, public sector, private sector, will have knowledge in their sectors. And yes, electronic charge is responsible for 85%, it's present in 85%. And when we see who opens, we weren't very thorough in relation to that. If they published the number of passengers per month, well, they were opening data. And 26% only opened the data. And then the contract systems, long-term, very complicated contracts with a data gap. We have many contracts that were signed 25 years ago. 25 years ago, the world was different. The technology were different, data were different. So how can a contract follow the evolution we have in the sector? And the second, lack of human resources, once again, people. People to work with the data and people who can work with the data. There are many servers who entered the business many years ago and they don't have knowledge about that. Python, R, software, and so on. And also a lot of confusion in relation to national laws. And what about the GPS data? Oh, because we have a bus data. No, because we have the data protection law. But wait, it's personal data. So how come? What is the confusion we have here? So from that point on, we managed to have this training course for different municipalities. We got 5 introduction sessions. Which are this data? How can we prepare indicators? And then something pretty operational. Which are the tools you need to have to work with GTFS, GPS, and electronic ticketing system? And that surprised us in a positive manner. Changes, or at least an attempt of change, came pretty fast. We had municipalities that changed the contract and they removed from the streets to improve the data, and then they had a better contract for public transportation. And here, maybe it's the most meaningful case, São Luís. The entire, it's a capital of Maranhão, the state of Maranhão. They've never worked with data in their entire structure. So there was always a consultancy that whenever they wanted to talk to data, to work with data, they have to talk to the consultancy, they aggregated the data, and so on. What was the number, the impacted population, and so on. And from those courses, from those trainings, they were able to build a Power BI tool in their own city hall, and it also gives autonomy to the servers and the technicians so they can perform public policies. So what did we do? We said, okay, we trained 60 municipalities, and 60 municipalities is nothing because we have more than 5,000 municipalities. So we organized all that. We made that available in distant learning. I don't know if you know INAPI, but with your CPF, you can enroll and have access to many free courses for public management. So we added there. And you can see the map of Brazil, right? Those are the municipalities that were trained in the course. More than 1,000 people attending in a course. So check the need. It's not that our course is amazing, but the lack of structure and tools that the municipalities have to train and the demands they have to train themselves. And inside all that, all the options of the course, 90% thought that the course was amazing. A year later, we went to the same cities and we asked, what changed? Did you implement anything? What have changed after the training? And we saw that only a few cities opened data. And then it was just like, well, we got disappointed. We trained, we made all the efforts, and it wasn't enough. No. Training is not enough. It's essential, but it's not enough. We saw that it lacks free tools to manage data in cities. So many of the tools are paid, and then you have to work. First, to make managers aware that using data is important, and make them aware enough so they could hire a tool that is paid, so those who work with public policies could work with the data. So 2 layers of complexity. And the second, that more radical changes demand this policy aspect, so they need public debate, so managers, they feel pressured to open data, and it lacks technical capacity. It's not only training every 10 years that will change everything. So what we've done is to invest in free tools, many partnerships with different organizations, so we can have tools available for viewing intra-city data. We have in Recife, we have this data portal. São Paulo has one, and with the maps and everything to work with the territory, but most municipalities do not have. So how can we give this support and also train together with the Ministry of Cities, and how can we transform this training into cycles? Cycles that it's not only spot initiatives. And the second point, I still have 5 minutes, are the social spatial inequality. And I'm talking about the metropolitan region here in São Paulo, that on the left, you can see the percentage of people with who are white and upper class. So the darker, the more people from this group. And on the left, the number of people, black people with poor status. And here you can see the contrast of on the left. The more central, we have a white upper class concentration, and in relation to the outskirts of the city, we have black poor people. So less lower access to opportunities, transportation, employment, and so on. And we said, okay, let's have this structure of working with a couple of seats. Social spatial inequality in relation to race, gender, and social economy status. 10 cities, different urban contexts. We have capitals, major capitals, smaller capitals, metropolitan region cities that we consider essential, and municipalities in the outskirts of the major capital areas. And then we had 3 phases. First, we had the diagnosis, step 0 of a public policy. So we had a quantitative analysis, getting all data available at the city. We created data from scratch. We set standards. We received the spreadsheets from different formats. So there was this work of setting a standard to create a quantitative analysis where people live by social group, and we chart the inequality of access to transportation, different transportation modality and opportunities, different activities in the city. To try to understand a little bit, okay, this is the overview of the city. So we know that this is not enough. We know that those 2 last talks were pretty evident. You have to talk to people. Data won't bring you a context. And you will see that those are interesting aspects, but different from what you need to work in the territory. So a second phase, qualitative, and I congratulate Jundiaí and São Paulo for doing that, because we saw that many of the cities we were working with never worked with qualitative analysis for public policies. So what did we do? We had interviews, walks, focal groups. We had, well, many instruments according to the engagement of the city, the capacity of engaging the players, the local players, because we know that in capitals it is easier because we have that pressure, or major cities like Campinas, cities, Novo Hamburgo, metropolitan region of São Paulo, and they've been to the public hearing of the master plan. People couldn't stand that. So try to engage from the beginning, and where people saw that they were adding to something. It's not only a hearing of 5 hours listening to a speech. So it's all in a system. I will give you a link so you can check the data. And then from that diagnosis, we have some points. First of all, financial access inequality to transportation, and that reflects race, class, gender. And I bring Manaus in that graph. 25% that has the lowest income in Manaus, they have to use 2 tickets, 30 to 60% of their income. Imagine if you have to commit 60% of your income with transportation. Black women, they are the ones. 30% white men. And even inside those 25% poorest, the gender inequality is quintessential. So first of all, we would like to bring this evidence. And in second place, we have a lot of things that are not in the maps and not in our data. The quality of buses, the quality of the infrastructure, the potholes, of course, are there, but buses with broken windows, cockroaches on the buses, dirty buses, and there was a bus with a snake inside. So imagine if people are inside the department and they don't go to the streets, they don't even imagine that is happening. Mainly those who do not use public transportation. And a lot of presence of violence and lack of security. And there was a woman we talked to in São Luís, and she said, well, she was selling cell phone cases, and on one of the streets, she was a little bit from low income. Partner said, I prefer to spend 1.6 reais plus to use the informal transportation because I feel safer than using the bus. And then it ends with everything we've worked with informal transportation, that it's less safer and place people in vulnerability conditions. And said, no, I feel safer in informal transportation because I know that when I will get the bus, there is a lot of people there and they touch me. Or because it's like that. Every single day they are going to steal me in the public transportation. So you start to enter a place in which the urban planner or the public server is so far away from. And this is quintessential for the second phase of our technical support we offered, that it was to have intersectorial workshops. So after the diagnosis, we had quantitative and qualitative. There was a day seminar. In the morning, we presented an overview of the diagnosis, and the qualitative was quintessential to make the managers sensitive to what we were seeing. And said, oh, the diagnosis will be because we will be there, we know what we are going to happen, and so on. And it was to bring an evidence that once again, the managers didn't know it existed. And among the things you have to work every single day, this will be left aside. And then we say, okay, there are inequality. Inequality has class, has race, and has gender. So besides many other things that were mentioned, also age, another diversity that is pretty important.
And after we did the presentation of the challenges, we would have a collective brainstorm on ideas and prioritization of initiatives so we could improve the situation of the city. And it's interesting because we had more ideas emerging at the time to address these issues. It was much less abstract than just saying we need to invest in bike paths, because that is not enough. And then in the final stage, we would provide technical support to all the municipalities that were engaged, because many cities were very resistant. We heard from some cities, no, we don't want to do this workshop because we are fine, really. We don't want to bring this problem to the city. So many municipalities were engaged, but other cities rejected the idea of seeing this as an urban and social problem. But for those who were engaged, we provided support through online monthly meetings for 6 months. And we have many examples of great initiatives, but I would like to highlight one, which is the urban mobility plan in the city of Palmas. They were doing a mobility plan, and this was the best examples for people who opened their eyes and they realized, okay, I didn't know this was a problem. I can no longer ignore it, and this should be a priority. And we know how to do mobility plans, but it is still a formal instrument for social struggle. So you cannot read this, but one of the strategic goals, we had the reduction of inequalities in social class, gender, and race. So it's a formal recognition that those aspects exist and they require specific actions. That is perhaps the first step so we can have policies to address this matter and reach this target. They even issued an RFP for hiring black women bus drivers in an attempt to reduce gender inequality in the public transportation system. I think I have mentioned some of the lessons in my presentation, but the main lesson is that public policies require time. And we only had a year for diagnosis, technical support, engagement. So I think that's the main message. It takes time. The same thing happened in the different projects. Very few cities were able to evolve in 1 year. And it's very difficult to implement long-lasting policies in a year with the right structure. So what we are doing now is search for new ways to continue with the project, especially the cities that already started the work. But we want to give visibility to what was done so we can keep the discussion open as part of the public forum. This is what I had for you. I used way more time than I was supposed to. I apologize. But if you wish to access the material, the data, and learn more about all the activities that I couldn't describe for you today, you can log on our websites. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was an incredible roundtable with a lot of opportunities. And you really did your homework. You really answered the guiding question. Well, I don't have a lot to say, but I do want to open for questions. I imagine that you are anxious to talk. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? First, I would like to congratulate all of you because during the presentations, I was able to feel, see, and notice with this view that I have as a researcher, how important it is to value research so it can become or generate an impact on and drive public policies forward. So congratulations. I know this is not an exclusive scenario in Jundiaí or in the different cities that were discussed. I think Jundiaí mentioned a child with disability, and the research that was just presented also touched on the matter of gender and race. But once again, I would like to say that people with disabilities, women with disability, elderly women with disability, we still need to fight a lot in order to change public policies, whether we are talking about a knowledge territory or on our daily activities. I'm not trying to be an activist, but I'm asking you to please investigate more on this. Yes, we need to focus on children, but since we are discussing public policies in general, I also believe it is important to consider new ways that could include and prioritize not only children, but also the elderly, people with disability, so we can have cities as a good place to live, a place where we can have all the terms that were mentioned here, like inclusion and belonging, so cities can be a place where people enjoy living. We are going through an apocalyptic moment, so to speak, a very difficult moment with a lot of environmental challenges and many other challenges. But it is important to remember that researchers can bring so many changes, and I felt really included and seen by this panel. So I think my message is, let's think about research's methodologies and programs that focuses not only on some specific groups, but on all of us. It's very difficult, but it's not impossible. It is in utopia, but we're all part of it. Thank you. We have 3 questions, and then we can perhaps get some final comments from the speakers. Good afternoon. My name is Wagner Romão. I'm a professor at political sciences at the State University of Campinas. First, I would like to congratulate all the speakers. And in my opinion, well, I always like to talk about the promise behind the 1988 Constitution, which aims at promoting public policies with social participation. And it's very difficult to do that in areas that are more institutionalized, like healthcare and education, and especially in areas that are connected to urban public policies, where we didn't have that institutionalization. So all the initiatives that you presented are extremely valuable because they now need to become institutionalized or part of an institution. Otherwise, we will depend on the political will of the present government, and that's not what our Constitution says. And in the case of urban public policies, this is even more difficult because they're very territory-based. And the control of the territory is connected to a lot of political pressure, a lot of economic pressure, and that could put social participation at a dead end. Many times, social participation can contribute in a way that is not going to be heard by the mayor, by the secretary, or by the city council, because it is a very unequal situation. There are a lot of pressure coming from the real estate market, from the public transportation system companies that affect the decision making. So that is one thing. The second thing, it was great to hear Tainá talking about FNP. And that highlights the importance of thinking about specialized team working with social participation. I'm using this generic term, but it is important to think about that at the municipality level. Together with Erika and Conceição, as a member of civil society, I was part of the PIDS process, and that was one example on how the urban plan sector needs to double its effort in order to promote social participation or social engagement, something that is part of what we do, but there is know-how and a technology here to be developed. And the experiences that you shared, especially the last one, when she highlighted the importance of a qualitative research and how long it takes. It's nothing trivial, just arriving there, getting a public hearing, 3 minutes to everyone, and that's it. No, there is a technology, there's a know-how on how to do this. And unfortunately, our municipalities, well, at least I'm not aware of any case where this was possible to be done, to have a permanent social participation sector. Another difficulty, which of course highlights the limit of social engagement. And it's interesting to work with children because it gives a very clear return, like we saw in the city of Jundiaí. But perhaps Tainá, that has a more generalist approach, I'd like to learn a little bit about the feedback, what is actually decided. How do you handle that inside the methodologies? Because the greatest incentive comes when those who participated know the result and know the influence that they had. That is the main challenge. Because if they understand that their participation was not taken into account, hardly ever they will come back. And congratulations again. I'll try to be quick. Good afternoon. I loved your presentations. I'm a public manager. I'm also a political scientist. And we know that when you look at the public sector, we need to follow the political cycle. So diagnosis, implementation, assessment, monitoring. So my question is not so much connected to the result, but more to the process. You mentioned this briefly, but I would like to hear the good practices connected to this feedback and how did society participate in the decision-making process. So if you could give us more color on that, I would appreciate it. Okay, final 2 questions, and then we'll get the answers from each speaker. I'm sorry, we don't have time. May I? First, I would like to congratulate the speakers. It was great. It's great to see young women doing amazing things. Congratulations. Now, you talked a lot about this, about different perspective on innovation. That, for me, was very interesting. And you talked about social engagement in a different way that we often hear. So it's a different type of social engagement. It's a different participation coming from the society. And one thing that I noticed is that you worried about designing the different type of engagement depending on the social group you are working with. And how difficult it is to do that. Because we like to do public hearings because it's simple, but it's unbearable. Nobody reads the law because this is an instrument for public prosecutors. It has nothing to do with social engagement. And one thing that was not mentioned was sustainability as a challenge. And we are going through a moment of absolute chaos. We are still facing like summer, like autumn, but those people living in the north and the south are already facing total climate chaos. So how would you do that? I loved the idea of thinking about children. I loved the engagement and the way you're designing all these processes. It was very interesting. And I have seen many, many things. Because in the past, things like you were doing were not allowed. So Luana doesn't have a question anymore, so let's get to the answers. So again, I'm sorry, you only have a minute. I think the focus of the questions was on social engagement. And I agree with you. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. But I agree that public hearings are not the best tool to discuss social engagement. It is a legal requirement, but many times it's not effective. What really works are workshops. Workshops based on different sectors, so we can get feedback on a local basis or based on different activities and type of people and residents and users from the region. So I think the focus, which was something we prioritized when developing PIDS, was the use of these sectorial workshops. And I agree with you, public hearings are not the best instrument, but they are a legal requirement. Going back to the environmental issue, we have 3 programs that I briefly discussed for trees, for urban green gardens, and for rain gardens that we didn't have time to describe, but they highlight our environmental concern in combination with the social engagement. So sometimes it's difficult, people don't want trees, but we are meeting with city representatives from the neighborhoods. We organize a meeting in order to raise awareness and inform them and deal with the change management. We have a number of targets in the plan that's available on our website and in more details in our research, because we truly believe that the biggest experience that we have had so far when implementing this public policy is the importance of social engagement and a multidisciplinary approach and the training of the public servants. So if I was to summarize the most important items, those would be it. Just to add to what was said, I have a comment to you, Professor. I fully agree when it comes to making these policies an institution, but we need to be careful with the red tape. Otherwise, processes become just like something that need to be done. Of course, we need a process, yes, but we end up on a repeated cycle. So through an ordinance, you say the process is required, and the new manager was not part of that, and that's why Sylvia highlighted the importance of cultural change.
I talk on behalf of urbanism, but I'm in the Department of Government, because when we manage to coordinate the sector, 17 departments from the nucleus of fixed meetings with the departments and the technical people, we can work in different levels the matter of activities. And also in the bias of participation, we can realize different levels of knowledge from the processes, from directives, or the master plan, and all the details from the territory. And then you need to dialogue with the population from the organization of that people, the social territory organization of that people. And then there is also a citizenship organization. We have studies that us people won't access if it's not with the population. So we have this internalization of knowledge that needs to be developed. Thank you. Difficult, but anyways, I could talk to you for hours, especially in relation to urban policies institutionalization. It's food for thought, but this is a little bit different from when we are talking about collective transportation or management of waste or some other things related to the territory. When we talk about that, we need the institutionalization. We have this lack of planning. Those who plan is not the public power, but the companies that operate, because they have the capital in their hands. Not only financially speaking, they have the power on their hands. And looking at other sectors, what was essential for that? The federal pact. That was a city attribution. No involvement from the federal government and the states, according to the Constitution. So City transportation is a city responsibility, and the state, it's a state responsibility, and between states, it's federal duty. So you have some attributes, and we will only be able to move forward when we have this interfederative pact. We are building that. We have some initiatives. We have the framework for public transportation, and we are moving forward. Of course, not as fast as we wanted, but we are moving forward. And the problem is at the table, different from what we had 10 years ago. About the specific organ, I agree with you. It would be an amazing initiative, but once again, it won't solve this problem of intra-sectorial approach. In the last 5-6 years, the number of municipalities with coordination relation to sexual diversity, gender difference increased meaningfully. Well, more than half of the cities have a department focused on human rights or whatever it's called. But when we were talking to people, we said, oh, we were never invited to talk about this. So once it's there, but the capacity to articulate and work together, well, we are far from that, far from what you are proposing. And in relation to the participation return, that's our challenge, mainly because of the policies that you've mentioned. What we did was return the reports for everyone who participated. We said, look, your participation brought this report. Is it a little? Yes, that's what we could do on the short term. Then you have to say, oh, recall that thing that you took part 2 years ago. Yeah, it's published. And then it takes a while for that, and this is one of the major challenges. So the design of methodologies articulated to each challenge, it was from dialogues with managers and the degree of engagement, and also the policy they had. Because one thing that we saw is that there's no purpose to say, oh, look, municipality, you have to have social equality. Yeah, I have thousands of agendas. That's not my priority. And then some of the methodologies was to try to understand what they were doing. Oh, I want a mobility plan. How can we incorporate that? Well, we cannot do that. And then with that, we have a participation instrument that is more adequate to build this public policy. And last but not least, my 1 minute is over, but the environmental perspective. When we see, well, who works with more public transportation? Who? Women. Who moves around on the city? Women or men? Women. Who uses cars in cities? Men or women? Men. That's the environmental perception. So that's what we have in our policies. So to incorporate that is also to think about the environmental policies than just thinking about electric buses. Thank you very much. Okay, just to finish, we have 5 minutes for coffee break. Go, pick up your coffee, come back, and then we are going to have our last keynote that is pretty expected with a professor from Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, who's going to talk about the 4th district and underwater, because it is a terrible situation they are going through. So there is a box outside for you to donate provisions for the south of Brazil. And the idea of CEUCI is that we could foster public policies. And today we learned from that. Thank you very much. And just one thing. There is this, despite Marcelo being the one to talk about that, everything that was mentioned has to be in the territory. Otherwise, it won't be a fourth generation. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
the talk by Professor Fernando Tuquinix from the Federal University of the Rio Grande do Sul. But like in the previous speakers, you can find his CV at the website of our event. And I would like to remind you all that after the end of our activities, we have a surprise prepared for you outside. So we have prepared a special surprise for all of you outside. And after the event, we made a reservation at a restaurant. On our website, you can find the address. It's really close by, a 5-minute drive. We can organize some carpooling so we all go. But anyway, we have a reservation for a happy hour and for networking. Of course, you have to pick up your own tab. Unfortunately, we did not receive funding for food, no, not to mention funding for alcohol or happy hour. But nevertheless, it will be very important for you to come. It's a great opportunity for doing network and to unwind and perhaps reflect on all the lessons that were shared since Friday. We had activities in all 5 days. Are we still waiting for anyone? No? Okay. So I think we can start. Otherwise, we will be running late. So once again, thank you very much. Professor Benami came from Porto Alegre. He needed to change his flight because he was supposed to fly from the Porto Alegre airport that is completely flooded. So he drove to Florianopolis. He exchanged his ticket. Going back home will not be easy as well. So thank you very much, because in a moment of deep pain, of seeing the city completely devastated by this tragedy, finding the energy to come here and share the knowledge, not only on knowledge districts, but also on urban resiliency, which is one of the main topics that he will discuss with us, topics that are essential for the fourth generation districts. So, without further ado, I'll hand the floor to Professor Benami. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you again for the invitation. It is an honor to be here sharing all these days with you. And it has been worth it coming here. I can say that. I'm the coordinator of the Urban Technology Group in the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. I have to find a new identity because I just retired last month, but the group is responsible for the studies I will present. And inside this group, we have a view on urban planning that includes the integration between different knowledge areas: hydrology, environmental comfort, geoscience. And then you might say, well, that's obvious. Every urban planning effort should encompass all that. But we decided to integrate that inside a digital platform. So we developed a software called SenCity that pretty much gives us the possibility of correlating the built form with all those different knowledge areas that I mentioned. So, since 1994, we were responsible for many housing plans, master plans, strategic infrastructure plan. Those that are listed here are the ones that I remembered this morning, but certainly there are more. And I'm here to talk about the experience at the 4th district in the city of Porto Alegre. It's sort of a brownfield, sort of a non-deteriorated urban area. I think it's a good way to describe it. And a district that suffered now during the floods. It suffered a lot with the event. I will discuss three dynamics: the regeneration dynamic, the rehabilitation dynamic, and requalification as complementary dynamics for this project. A project that was called the Master Plan for the 4th District. So the Master Plan for the 4th District, more than 50% of the diagnoses and the proposals that were presented to support the law that was enacted 2 years ago came from this master plan, the 4th District law. And that was done through a program called Plus 4D. This program was approved through a decree in 2022 and considers many references to the master plan. But I will show you that the essential elements are not here. And I think you understand what I'm trying to say later. So this is the law that I mentioned before from October 5th, 2022. And this piece of legislation is based on the project from the master plan. And the law states that the special regime of Plus 4D will bring flexibilization to urban parameters in the area, and it will grant benefits through the assessment of activities and endeavors that will be done through minimum, mandatory, and optional scores. And there are a number of attachments. So we're selling soil or land based on certain parameters. I can build, and again, for every 0.1, 0.2, I have to comply with a certain parameter. So this program called 4D Center that was approved a few years ago encompasses an area. I don't know if you can see the mouse pointer, but it basically encompasses a soccer team stadium here, and this area called Humaitá and Vila Farrapos. That's where the soccer stadium is. And this area was not included in the master plan, but after a consultancy from the World Bank, they suggested that this area was included in this program of revitalization in the 4th District. At the time, we didn't have the resources, or we didn't see the priority, this area as a priority, because this is a very recent and new area in the city. As of this area here that I'm highlighting with the mouse pointer is a historical part of the city. So the score table for the project is here. There are different principles that are used, and developers should focus on each of these principles so they can earn points and build more in the project. And here we have a very sophisticated, or apparently sophisticated, criteria for scoring, so they can receive more constructive indexes. So this is a list of actions and interventions from the 4D program, because initially it was removed or gotten by the master plan. But the map is not really detailed, and you will see why in a minute. For example, here we have the complex for the Metropolitan Hospital, an area with 200,000 square meters of constructed or built area that was proposed for the entrance of the city. And on the other column of the list, we have something that has nothing to do with what a metropolitan complex would be, because, again, that was not very important during the defendants of the project. The recovery of all pump houses in the city of Porto Alegre. So back in 2022, in the law, it was stated that all the pumps, the water pumps, should be recovered. So I'm just highlighting this for no specific reason. Now, let's talk about the project, and then we can come back to the matter, because I think the project survived for all these years and will survive for many more years despite of the flood. So the degraded central areas do not contribute to the municipal wealthness, and because they are not included in the municipal agenda, they become a burden for different administrations. And that's what happened in Porto Alegre in the 4th district historically. The strategies to refurbish or regenerate the area in Brazil many times choose an easy way to increase attractiveness. All you have to do is to offer high coefficients of build potential and bring flexibility to the rules. So the land is cheap. You create a law to bring more flexibility on constructions, and that is it. So through what we call CEPAC here in Campinas, and we call the selling of constructive indexes, we would get funds for refurbishing that degraded area. So I will offer more possibilities for construction to developers, and I will gain the necessary funds in order to renovate or improve the infrastructure in the area. This quote here from the diagnosis that evaluated all the plans, including the master plan, is essential. The urban plan detailed in Master Plan 4D, the one that we did, should be the foundation for the simulation of the performance and parameters for new buildings. However, it is needed to assess alternatives that allow for the constructive potential to be done in order to bring more populational density, even in the smaller plots. And that's when things go wrong, because our proposal was to replace that idea of plots and start thinking about blocks. And when they did that, that's what we started seeing. In a very common lot, or this, a plot, in a very common area. In the middle of small houses with no strategy to organize the insides of the blocks. Because when you bring more flexibility of the constructive potential, considering the parameters that supposedly were assessed, would allow for this increase in the constructive potential and the change in the parameters. One of the projects, the one that I initially showed you, is already being built. The second one, construction hasn't started, but it has been approved. There are opportunities in the 4th districts. The degraded areas are close to the historical downtown that are initially attractive due to the low price for the land. There are many examples of urban rehabilitation that use strategy to use the infrastructure and the heritage site that was already built. So we create an opportunity for real estate businesses that can rehabilitate broad urban areas with a potential of valuing the urban areas. We are 2 minutes away, for example, from one of the fanciest neighborhoods in Porto Alegre. All you have to do is cross an avenue and you get to Moinhos de Ventos, one of the most upscale neighborhoods in the city. We are 3-4 minutes away from an area called Parcão, which is very valued. Of course, if I renovate this area, I add more value to the vicinities. So what would be the step-by-step of the solution? The smart use of the current buildings start by recognizing the infrastructures, the topology, and the equipment that can be recovered. That's what we did in the diagnosis. We did a broad diagnosis going down to the city accesses, not the bridge I mentioned before that was built later. And we did a thorough analysis on all the existing infrastructure. And first of all, we have to address the recovery of the mobility infrastructure. The main lines to be recovered in the 4th district, and in my opinion, in any urban project, create a macro mesh that defines theme structures that can become potential polygons for priority intervention. So we defined the mesh, we connected that to the points of entrance of the city, and inside the macro mesh, we identified during the diagnosis what were the potential elements to be developed during the project. These polygons are made by blocks with parceling that are not appropriate to the new uses. Usually this parceling was done to accommodate industries and warehouses because that used to be an industrial area. The current urban legislation doesn't provide the legal framework for actions that will determine the use of the properties in those blocks. So what we have in the 4th district are parcels that probably cannot be used to bring a new program that is needed. In Barcelona at 22 at, they change the internal parcels of the blocks. Barcelona in 22 at distribute the constructive potential that came from each individual plot to the landowners in value. And with that, they had the freedom and the flexibility to do the urban block project that was done. Our system doesn't allow for the maintenance of individual rights that are ensured through the constructive potential of the plot. In Barcelona, they were able to make this legal bridge, transferring the share in the condominium of that block. And this difficulty imposed by the legislation reduces the speed of transformation in areas in need of urban rehabilitation. I'm saying that in Brazil, we face a huge legal challenge. So we can go from the theory, when we are idealizing a project, to the actual implementation that sees the Brazilian Constitution and the federal legislation and as a barrier. Pretty much all the legal frameworks that you can imagine do not have legal clarity or the legal stability that allows investors to trust the project that is being proposed, especially in terms of speed of implementation.
So in order to make the rehabilitation feasible, we need transformation speed compatible with the need to gather investments. So I need speed so this investment will be present in clear signs of improvement and implementation of what would be ideal for the investor, that is the profit, the success of their business. That's why urban areas rehabilitation involves structured operation with different public agents associated to different factors: cultural, social, community, legal, infrastructural, and also financial. All of them synchronized in time and space. Hence, a business plan and a design that will make in the short, medium, and long term the rehabilitation. And that synchronism and this urban design involves the change of the grain and how we plan. In the lot, those formalities, height, width, and so on, they are prefixed in the Brazilian plans, and they make it easier to have these constructions. I go lot by lot, but I don't know what will be in each lot. Depends on the person responsible for that. The block form requires territorial strategy intelligence to articulate many factors: cultural, social, legal, infrastructural, with the actions designed in urban space. So areas in which I will implement and negotiate block by block. So set of blocks and set of blocks, they design and infrastructure to be placed in that region. The block increases the possibility to associate the volume of the block and the public space, and also the adjacent blocks and the units that comprise the block. And that also includes the use of models capable of checking the performance of different attributes. So to summarize, investments in degraded area rehabilitation go through 6 factors: rearticulation of the mobility structure to make it more articulated with the rest of the city, reconfiguration of the private soil with parceling and use, readjustment of major equipment and their programs, so reconvention, the update of the energy, sanitation, and communication infrastructure, structure of the local management system of the urban space, and the creation of things that we master plans do not use: business plans. So if there is no economy, if there is no financial equation inside the transformation, it will vanish as a possibility. And then we move forward. The 4th district is this entire area. We have 2 bridges that cross the Guaíba. So we have Ponte Nova, and it was the limit of our intervention area at Dona Teodora Avenue. The cultural heritage site on the 4th district is pretty rich. It includes buildings from different decades and some in pretty good conservation status, mainly at Farrapos up to Cristóvão Colombo, and also modernist infrastructure. This is an example with a great mural for those who leave the airport and sees that. It's amazing. The 4th district also has some arrangements like the creative district that houses more than 50 activities related to arts, culture, leisure, design offices, architecture offices. This term was brought by Jorge Piquet, a Brazilian Spanish guy who lives in the 4th district, and he is graduated in philosophy. Well, he's a great guy. We have streets in the 4th district that are dedicated to construction material, another cluster there. And we also have problems. Before the flood, it had problems with floods, with their drainage system. And there is a segregation in the urban tissue from one side to the other side with mobility. And we have collective transportation that reached this in the federal government guidelines, and it removed people from the city center and put in the outskirts. And it ignored the harm that it would do for the urban tissue that was integrated from one side and the other of the corridor. So it reduced the permeability between one side and the other with the corridor. There's also, thanks to this mobility policy, that added a system over trails. It's like a surface subway. It left some areas that were totally connected, isolated by these constructions. So we have today the Instituto Caldeira that is inside this island you see here. We also watched, with a lot of sorrow, an area from where trains would do their maneuvers to be invaded due to negligence from the city government. People with low income that transformed that area into, well, it was called Vila dos Papeleiros because as it is an area of warehouses, there is a lot of disposal of paper. And people went there, and in the region we have, in the city center also, where many goods come in cardboards. We have a lot of collection and transformation. So they recycle some things, and it converted into something serious in relation to prostitution and drugs. And that's what we have there today. And we have the 4th district, huge constructions coming from the logistic heritage, so they are all unoccupied. And how do we propose the mobility infrastructure? The 4th district has an important location in Rio Grande do Sul. You come and go from Porto Alegre to all areas of Rio Grande do Sul through the 4th district. It's a hub. And with the flood, it became necessary to create access corridors because the 4th district is underwater. So we have a structure for a regional integration, mainly in relation to the north and the west of the city, and that structure connects Porto Alegre to this region through the 4th district. Everything gets through the 4th district, including the airport. So it is a strategic region in relation to the modal point of view. And we understand that this region, well, it has a strong emphasis, or we could emphasize two aspects, one regional and the other as municipal. So we have equipment like an airport, a metropolitan hospital, stations. Inside the west sector, it seems to be proper. That's the darker part here. It totally relates to the metropolitan region, while the other part goes with the municipality. So the infrastructure we have to consider, and the municipality, and we have this dark and light duality. And the bus corridor takes to downtown, city center, the city center. So when the buses reach downtown, they only have 20% of their capacity. They left the passengers throughout the city, and then it's just like a terminal for return. And we understand that the maintenance of the corridor and the maintenance of this terminal at the end of the line that doesn't carry a lot of people could be replaced by intermediate terminals that could transport people from one point to their destination inside the metropolitan region. And that's the purpose of all that, in fact. You can see here one street, Horcâncio Gomes. On one side of Farrapos, it has this way, degraded look, and on the other side, it's the same street. Because of the end of the street, there is a closure. So at the end, it is to make this corridor to disappear, so those intermediate terminals will be present, and part of the traffic will be distributed to the city center, and the others to all new centralities of Porto Alegre. There's no way we are going to concentrate all bus traffic in downtown Porto Alegre. We are going to increase more permeability of the Farrapos Avenue, where we have the corridor. With that, there will be the original permeability that will be brought back. And then crossing would be easier. That's the situation of an area that has the corridor. And here, how we propose something quite trivial. Without the corridor, buses can move around because they wouldn't have the need to have exclusive corridor. This is a bridge close to the island I've mentioned. And here is what we proposed. To pass the infrastructure of the trains Uber, that's surface train, so people could overcome the barrier and reach Caldeira Institute coming from downtown. Here, how is the Caldeira Institute today? And and here is our proposal with this area and this moment, and there is a bleacher on the top of the train passway. Here, an analysis of the local integration, and we saw that close to the city center, that is this picture on the right, we have a lot of discontinuity and big blocks. And we see that Voluntários da Pátria, there is a major avenue that can be refurbished and become a linear park when the sidewalks become broader, because this is just an abandoned pathway. This area can be the place where we have this longitudinal axis of light mobility that would be a living lab of the 4th district with the use of technologies and alternative technologies. We understand that part of this living lab can be done in this area, increasing here the potential of walkability inside these blocks, creating spaces in the blocks, increasing the potential of accessibility for pedestrians. We have also other parts of Santos Dumont. We propose the intervention in blocks, so there would be a larger integration between pedestrians and cars. Major equipment and their programs, we divided the north part and the northwest part with Metropolitan Hospital. The industry and technology would be right after that. Arts and culture in the city center, and Moinhos de Vento neighborhood and the creative district in this south part. With that, we can generate themed sectors that could be fostered with transversal access that would go through all these themed structures. And here we could have cuisine, we could have creative industry, and also technology and civil construction. This diversification of activities shows what we understand, because the colors, they are represented in pixels in a diverse manner, because we think that the soil should not be used with exclusivity. So there would be always this mix. And I would like to call your attention in relation to this, because before preparing the project for the fourth sector, upon request of the rector of the university, we analyzed the potential of growth of the university. Today, the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul has 400,000 square meters, and we divide that into different units. Just an example, the engineering school has approximately 2 square meters per student and professor, employee, in all premises of the engineering school. What does that mean? So it's just like a tight space. You don't have room for labs, for activities, and everything. The capacity of expanding the engineering school inside the campus is zero. And the engineering school does not want to leave the central campus. We offer a different place in the 4th district to expand the engineering school close to the central campus. Just so you can imagine, USP at the engineering school, in the engineering they have almost 80 square meter per professor, student, employee. MIT, if I'm not wrong, has twice that, or 3 times that if we do the math. So imagine the distance that we are from the scientific and technological development if we do not offer the premises that are adequate. So the 4th district has an exclusive program to embrace this enlargement of the infrastructure. And all that was located inside this map that you can see on screen, where the agronomy school would be, architecture school, engineering school, and so all other institutes and schools that need space. We also open room for private universities and community universities. All of them would have a location in abandoned buildings from the state, the federal government, all the city government. And we have suggestions here, because as we saw yesterday in the presentations, that one regional district like Porto Alegre cannot be exclusively offering infrastructure only for Porto Alegre. It has the opportunity to offer infrastructure to different universities from Rio Grande do Sul, and they could also place a campus inside inside Porto Alegre, and also all the industry that we have in the metropolitan area. So here we have a proxy for the strategy we proposed. So here we have major infrastructures underused that would be part of the program. Here it goes unit by unit. We had meetings with 40 directors from the universities in order to test the proposal. And here on the side, we have a green area program, because when we redesigned the blocks, we proposed an increase in green areas of the 4th district. So we proposed the adjustment in different sectors. I'm going to move faster because Gabby is worried with time.
And here you see the list of programs and actions that are part of the 4D Plus program and a simplified map. And this is the map. How they would occupy the space. The 4D law doesn't have any type of spatial specificity. And here you see both maps side by side. Here's some opportunities and the definition of opportunity areas in the different sectors. We have defined the priority intervention polygons, and inside each of these polygons, we created proposals for changes in the use of private grounds. This is the experimental sector, where we work more directly. Here we see the blocks in the experimental sector and the blocks from the area of the project. We see here that the sizes are very different, and we have called these blocks fast blocks. The concept of a fast block is explained here. With the underuse of land today and the use of public buildings, using the strategy of the fast blocks from Barcelona, our idea is to have percentage of the ground for public use and to concentrate the constructive potential in 75% of the block. So everyone that had that index would be transferred to 75% of the block, and in the remaining 25%, Barcelona, just as a side comment, uses 30% for public use. We are proposing 25, and we offer additional benefits for partnership and for condominiums. So this is the fast block in the current scenario. Here we have social housing, green areas or squares and public equipments in the public area, and the 75% in the remaining area. So we need to define control parameters for the intervention. They were given through elements that include sunlight and shading, reconversion. How much time do I have, Gabby? Am I over time? Should I finish? We use a software that I'll show you quickly later in order to have the formal control of the volumetry of the block. We respect the walkability parameters and the low impact mobility parameters, drainage parameters, and a number of other attributes that must be respected. And we did a proof of concept for the funding of the block that involved quantifying the financial aspect of the endeavor, how many people it will house, how many companies, how many job positions, and how much it would cost, and how much it would represent in terms of taxes for the municipality. We developed a model for the financial potential of the block, and inside the proof of concept, we looked at the cost and how much revenue it would generate. Here we see the total difference that exists between what we have today in terms of green areas and how much we would get after the donation of the 25% of the block, and some areas that could house social housing projects. Combining all that, we see in black the current scenario, and in orange what would change in terms of social housing in the area. The differences in the equipment related to culture, education, healthcare, and the density, which is an essential factor for the success of the area. The drainage infrastructure would be resilient. We would have retention pools below the first level of the blocks, making 180 million that was supposed to be invested in the pump system in the 4th district to be reduced to 30 million. We anticipate the use of communication networks, and we also assess the potential of solar panels on the roof of the larger buildings. Just by using this area, we could generate 77 gigawatts a year, which is sufficient power to light 6,000 public lighting poles without spending a dime, just by installing solar panels on the roof. In the managing committee, we have the public authority, the community, institutions, and the private sector. And they would work on the priority intervention polygons and define priority actions. And they would create a fund coming from tax collection, funding, and other sources. This is the current scenario, what we have today in the 4th district. This is the Caldeira Institute. This is what was left from the area after the flood. The water is coming down. This is the current situation, or a little bit before the flood. A place for youth to meet, 2,500 people working every day. And now I will show you a little bit about the software that we used for assessing the plans that we have developed. It's called again Sen City. So it creates volume simulations based on parameters. And again, we are using, of course, the existing parameters from the 4th district. It also does, based on the change in parameters, it does an assessment on sunlight and shaded areas. Here we see how different buildings can have an impact on the shaded areas, on neighboring constructions and the public space. We can see which facades receive less than 2 hours of sunlight a day, or which areas of public space do not receive sunlight for at least 2 hours a day. Visibility is interesting because I can assess the impact on public space by the addition of any building. So for example, I'll finish. I still have 30 seconds, right? A tolerance. This visibility analysis sees in red when the visibility is high and in blue when there's no visibility. So areas that won't be impacted by the new building are painted in blue. Areas that will be impacted are painted in red. And we also did a model for the flood. Once it happened, we used the same volumetric model to document the rise in the water level. Here we see the position of the water, level of the water changing until it got to 5 meters, 0.5. Now it's back down at 4 meters, 0.20, and how it will, of course, go away so the state can leave this embarrassing situation. The algorithm allows, because we have an electronic meter on at the in the river, and we know at any depth or any rise in the water level, I can see if a determined area will be flooded or not. I hope that this is useful for you to understand that we have followed and we still follow everything that's happening. I am part of some initiatives, both by the state government and the city government, for the recovery of the city of Porto Alegre, but I would like to deeply thank any help you might send our way. It is very important, and the image for me is a very important one. This is a graffiti art done by Cobra, and it talks a lot about what us from Rio Grande do Sul believe. Everything we believe, it's possible to be done. Thank you very much. It's really emotional witnessing a disaster of this magnitude, despite of all the effort that you and your team have made to try to avoid this type of scenario. So it is really, really an emotional situation. Very sad. We would love to hear you talk for hours, but unfortunately we do have a time limitation, and we also have the teams that need to return home. So we have time for one question. One question, one comment. Whoever raises their hand first get to talk. Or we can talk outside later and at the restaurant during happy hour. So thank you very much, Benami, Professor Benami. That was excellent. There was no better way to end this event than this. Now, I would like to ask the team responsible for organizing the event to please join me on stage. We are going to do the closing ceremony. So, Milena, Luana, all the postdoc students. We have Dennis. Oh, maybe Dennis. No. So the postdoc students. We can stand. I think we don't need to sit for this. So the idea is to acknowledge the work that was done. So on behalf of CEUCI, or maybe yes, we can sit. I think we have room for everyone. Where's Zara? Oh, there she is. Do we have a chair for Zara? I don't remember exactly what we planned, but I'll start. I would like to say thank you to the whole technical team, and then I will ask each member of the organizing committee to say a few words. So I would like to say thank you to the English interpreters. I loved learning that they loved the conference and they had fun. We have Fernanda and Juliana. We have the technical team, Ricardo and Marcelo. I don't remember. Oh, perhaps we can turn that off. I'm out of time. There was a lady outside handing the headsets. The Brazilian Sign Language interpreters, they also said they appreciated the conference. We have Fernanda, Diogo, Leticia, and Rita. Everyone from AV, Bruno, Luiz, and Pietro. All the administrative, Vanessa and Padilla. The lady from the kitchen, I couldn't get her name, but she was very helpful. I think Milena can talk about our sponsors, but now I will hand the floor to the CEUCI team, and I will ask for you to say just a few words on the event. Can I speak in English? Boa tarde a todos. Eu gostaria de agradecer a vocês pela presença, a participação no nosso congresso. Gostaria de lembrá-los sobre a certificação, o certificado de participação. Os certificados serão enviados para o e-mail utilizado no cadastro. Eu espero que vocês tenham gostado, achado o evento informativo e inspirador, e mais uma vez eu gostaria de agradecer a todos e todas pela participação. Muito obrigada. Eu me chamo Sara. Hi everyone, my name is Patricia. It was a pleasure to be with you for the day today's. It was a pleasure. It was a very difficult job. We started organizing this event last year. I would like to thank the CDC and the team that helped us, and some specific areas of the university that helped us. The Innova, the Innovation Agency, the Pro-Rectorship for Research, the Rectorship that helped us with transportation and coffee break. And I would like to say a special thank you to our team that taught me a lot. I learned from them every day. My name is Silvia Stucchi, and I would like to thank all the participants on the public policy roundtables. I also like to say thank you to the speakers and say that I learned a lot over the 5 days of the event, and I would like to thank CEUCI for the opportunity and the trust. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Carvalho. First of all, I would like to say thank you to the whole team. A very intense work, and I think we were a wonderful team. I coordinated the technical visits, so I'd like to say thank you to Gustavo Martins, Mateus Maiara Adorno from the Sirius Particle Accelerators. We took 35 participants there. Paula Packer, Nisa Ramos from Embrapa that welcomed 15 participants. Mariana Maio and Viviane from Horta do Florenci. Mariana Zanata, who organized the visit to the Unicamp Tech Park. And Adriana Eloá, Gilberto, our monitor, Martins, and Gilberto da Mata, who welcomed 15 participants. It was a great moment of interaction with very interesting conversations, and it was clear to see how much civil society is interested in learning about innovation districts, tech park, and how they can participate in a more inclusive and diverse university. Hello, my name is Luana. I would like to say a special thank you to all the workshop participants. They were very interesting and highly productive. So once again, thank you for everyone who attended. Leia, Jean-Pierre, who did the second workshop on Saturday, Laura, and Victor, who conducted workshops on Friday and Saturday. And all our students, Leticia, Adriana, and Lani. And a special thank you for the opportunity of being part of CEUCI and this event. I always learn a lot from you. Thank you. Hello, my name is Marcela. I'm the scientific coordinator of the event. I would like to say thank you to all the authors who have submitted their papers. Thank you to all the professors that have reviewed the studies so the papers could be published. Let's remember that the annals will be published in the coming weeks, and you will receive that in the following weeks via email. I also like to thank the coordinators for the scientific sessions, Evandro Monteiro, Luciana Schenck, Thalita Dalbello, and Conceição Silvério, who moderated the scientific discussions. And I would like to remind you all that we have one publication available, so everyone who has submitted a paper is invited to submit a paper for the Park Journal, who is a journal on research and architecture and construction. They will publish a dossier on this conference in 2025, and as of today they are receiving submissions up to July 31st. So there's a limit of 31% of similarity between the paper that was submitted to the conference and the paper that you will submit to the journal. So after the discussions, after all the keynote presentations, perhaps you can review your papers, expand them, and submit them to the Park Journal. All authors are invited to do that. And thank you very much to everyone who came and shared their knowledge with us.
Well, you saw it was group work, pretty intense, so I thank the entire group. Without them, we wouldn't be able to get together and have such fruitful days. And to finish, I would like to thank the audience on YouTube. Thank you. Follow us on social media. I thank, of course, the keynote speakers who came from far away to be here with us. And now, I would like to invite you to be in the final presentation, a cultural presentation that will be presented outside, and then we'll keep on talking at Empório do Nono, having some draft beer. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.